It is never a good thing when you hear reports about a players-only meeting, Derek. A team never has a players-only meeting after like a 15-game win streak.
No, that's called going out for a party, which may
Maybe
also be
they
a players
should
only
do.
meeting, but it's like
Maybe,
they're just doing things fun and happy, not, sheltering themselves in the locker room and sheltering in place to talk about whatever the hell's going on.
maybe they should do that. If I have this last season of Ted Lasso straight, I think they all enjoyed a night out in Amsterdam, and that turned their season around because they got a chance to do some bonding and kick back and put the frustrations aside and just enjoy one another's company and all that. Maybe they should, if it was last night in Seattle or tonight in Phoenix, just go out, have a good time. What's it
Well,
going
it's
to
like
hurt at
Bull
this point?
Durham. Bull Durham, go out and get drunk and meet a rain out. Go out and get a rain out and put all the sprinklers on the field and then slide like you're on a giant slip and slide all over the place with Crash Davis to do something completely random and irresponsible, but also very fun.
It sounds like, and again, like at this point, nothing has worked. So let's
No.
get creative. Let's go somewhere, have a good time, get weird, see what happens, and hope it turns the season around. We are grasping for straws at this point, and we will do that for the
Yep.
next 45 minutes or so on this episode of the On Fire podcast. Thanks to OG's constantly launching new menus this year. They're focused on bringing in new items that keep OG's menu fresh and on trend, like a Mediterranean salmon bowl, some specialty pizzas, buffalo cauliflower, a Nashville hot chicken sandwich. You can, of course, take advantage of OG's loyalty program. It's super easy. You can do it online, earn loyalty points, rewards, and exclusive offers, all of which leads to fun and free food. And ordering online from OG's is easier than ever. And you can get OG's straight to your door. And although the U.S. women's national team no longer a part of the proceedings, you can, of course, catch the World Cup. Big tournament action at OG's and be entered for a chance to win an OG's soccer kit. We don't mean a uniform, we mean a kit. So you can go out and play 2 small soccer goals, cones, and targets. So you, your family, kids can go out there and sharpen your skills. Contest is in-store only, participating locations only. Without further ado, the welcome music. Great as always to be with you. It is the On Friar podcast. I am Darnay Tripp. He is Derek Togerson, and it's been a few days, Derek. It's not things aren't going in the right direction. I was happy to kind of just write off the Dodger series as the Dodger series. It didn't do too much damage in terms of where they stood at the in the wild card standings, but suddenly I think my confidence, the confidence of many others, has been shaken based on what's happened in the last few days.
Well, Don, I think you said it really well when we were sitting in the newsroom here just a little bit ago, and you said, I just want them to pick a lane, right? Because they've lost 5 out of 6, many of them in excruciatingly gut-punchy fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And they've only lost a game and a half in the wild card. Like they're 4.5 games out of a playoff spot, while they've still played truly awful baseball. So can they just either do 2021 and thoroughly collapse and just end this all now and pull the plug and cut the cord? Or can they just go on some massive streak and rip the last wild card spot from everyone with absolutely no question and assert themselves as the authority in the National League playoffs? They're middling. And there's nothing worse than middling, because middling is boring. So right now, not only are they middling, but they're boring. And that's a terribly awful combination. So just choose one. At this point, I don't give a damn which one it is. Just choose something so we can all set ourselves emotionally on how we have to handle the rest of this season.
Yeah, I mean, that could be our podcast right there. We might not need to go any further, because I think you kind of encapsulated where I'm at, and I think where a lot of people are, and it feels a bit like an extension of like the lead up to the trade deadline, where we're all trying to figure out like how they're going to position themselves, what they're going to do. Are they gonna sell? Are they gonna buy? And they did just enough the week leading up, and especially the weekend leading up, with that Rangers series, to say, okay, yeah, all right, maybe if they pick up a few pieces, make some savvy moves, then this is a team that could kind of make a push. And so I thought that was like behind us. They played all right after the break, and then here we are. Suddenly it's not so promising. We're seeing a bit of a downturn, and this is right around like 2 years to the day. I want to say it was in the August 10th to 12th range where things went south in 2021.
Yep.
And they obviously started from a much better position. I mean, they were, like 17, 18 games above 500 before they really collapsed a couple years ago. And now they are struggling to just get above 500. But that's like the most infuriating thing, right? When you're just kind of a mediocre team.
They got to get to 500. Forget about above as a bonus.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild. And, we were joking in the newsroom. It's like you've got this huge series ahead. You've got a huge week and a half ahead. Really, you have like a huge 4 weeks ahead because they're playing almost exclusively like wild card contenders for the next few weeks, including 7 in a 10-game stretch against Arizona. And once again, we're kind of in one of these phases where like, okay, maybe it's make or break time. Maybe this is when we start to see who this team is, whether it's, must win types of games that they lose and they start to kind of fall far enough where you feel like, okay, it's just not happening this year, or they really get a chance to take down a team like Arizona that's in front of them, pick up a bunch of wins, go on a streak and really gain ground. But I almost feel like just based on how the season is gone, they'll go 4-3 or 3-4 against Arizona. They'll just kind of tread water. They'll hover around 4 or 5 games out, and we'll be in this purgatory of just wondering, is this team going to do it? And the answer will be continually no until they flip the switch. But I think that's what's so agonizing about it is they're not out of time. There's still plenty of time. And you almost wish that there wasn't because it's just been a really rough exercise to kind of just hold on to hope and to whatever positive sign and think, maybe they can do it because time hasn't run out yet. And it's not going to run out. There's unless they really do fall apart, they're still going to have time and opportunity. If they're in this place going into September, you're going to be like, well, teams have done it before. And so I think that's what makes it kind of tough because, like you said, they just haven't picked a lane and said, yes, we're a true contender. We're going for it. Or we're falling apart. We're far enough out of this thing that it's not realistic to think that we could actually make a run at it.
Yeah, what stinks is what they'll probably do is go like you said, 3-4, 4-3 against the Diamondbacks, sweep Baltimore, and then drop 2 out of 3 to Oakland. Because that's what this team does. They'll sweep the Rangers and look fantastic against the first place team, and then they'll drop 2 out of 3 against the Royals. This, it makes no sense. There's no rhyme or reason to any of this. And that's the thing that nobody can wrap their brain around. Why? Why does this happen? Is it a lack of focus? It's not a lack of talent. We've talked about that ad nauseum. These guys, they don't focus, I guess, or commit themselves when they need to at the best possible times. Can I read something that Juan Soto said after the game on Wednesday night?
I figured we would get to this at some point.
Yeah, I think this is probably a good transition into this. All right. And this is a quote. Thank you, AJ Cassavell, by the way, for doing the wonderful work that you do on MLB.com.
Here.
It's been really inconsistent. Some days we do, some days we don't. We got to do it every day. And here's the best part. Days like this, series like this, we just give up. Literally, we just give up instead of keep grinding, keep pushing. We've got to forget about yesterday and keep moving. End of quote from Juan Soto. How? How does it, A, how does a professional baseball team give up? B, how does a professional baseball team as talented as this one give up? C, WTF? How is it even possible to give up in a game, in a series, where does that enter the consciousness of a professional athlete? That's what I don't understand, and that ticked me off.
What aspect of it ticked you off?
The fact that it's happening.
Okay.
Right. I know people ask, why would he say it? I don't care if he said it. He said what
Yeah.
he said what we all see. Right. I have
Yeah.
no problem with Juan Soto for saying what actually is, and more power to him for saying what actually is. The problem is that it's happening.
Yeah.
The problem is that it's there, and that is the case with this team. That's the problem. The part I have a problem with.
Yeah, I was actually like, if he had said this in May or, early June, I might have been like, I don't know how I feel about that. I was like, good on you, Juan Soto, for, saying the quiet part out loud, so to speak, and saying what I think a lot of people are thinking and have kind of observed about this team. And so at a certain point, like, let's just call a spade. And um whether it's accountability or calling guys out or just addressing like the problem, the elephant in the room, the cause of kind of their issues, it can't hurt at this point. And like, as we joked off the top, it's like, what else are you going to do? And so I think identifying that and pointing to that and causing the guys hopefully to do like some level of like self-reflection, like, could I be doing more? Have I given up? Now I know if every professional athlete has that what's the word?
Pride.
Well, no, it is pride, self-awareness to actually like say, oh, maybe this applies to me. Maybe there is something more I can be doing. I don't know. Like,
Oh, you'd
everybody's
be
wired.
shocked at how few professional athletes actually do have that.
Right. And so maybe it just falls on deaf ears and doesn't go anywhere. But I like that somebody, especially in his position, I don't know where he is kind of necessarily from a leadership standpoint, but one of the stars in the team, and one of the guys that has had kind of one of the better performers on this club, to go out and say that, like, why not? And who knows what his future holds. You hear quotes from him about how much he likes San Diego and this and that. It's just, I don't know, but there was a Nat, I want to say Jesse Doherty, a Nats reporter, quote tweeted, I don't know if it was AJ's tweet or whatever, but basically it was like, one of the things I appreciate about Juan Soto is that he gets really blunt and really frank when he's frustrated, and he will speak his mind. And obviously, as reporters, people in the media, we really appreciate that. I think fans, it's harder for them because of there's like a deeper emotional attachment. And what does that mean for the team? What does it mean for other guys, and chemistry, and this and that? But like, I'm at this point in the season, I'm just like, call it what it is. And if you feel that way and feel comfortable saying it, put it out there, and hopefully it'll lead to some sort of like awakening, like, yeah, that is actually the case. Now what can we do about it?
Yeah, chemistry is what it is, and meaning it's not. This team has a fatal flaw, and it is the way that they all interact. There's no chemistry on this team. None. I've even floated the idea that Juan Soto is part of the chemistry problem. Maybe he doesn't need to be around here.
Twitter didn't appreciate that, Derek.
I don't even look. I'm sure it was probably something that ticked a lot of people off. But when he's not playing any defense, and he is hitting a home run in the bottom in the ninth inning of a game where they're down by 10 and doing his jumping around the bases and stuff, when it's obviously contrived, that strikes me as he's a stat guy. He's a stat gatherer. He's about me, right? Winning, hey, great. Winning is fine. Winning is fantastic. I want my money. That's what it seems like to me. And that's why I said it could be emotion talking. Is, yes, I do speak emotionally on occasion, maybe even more than I should. But there's something wrong with this team. Nobody can deny that. So now we have to figure out, Darnay, let's do an exercise where we find out what's causing this. All right. What are all the likely or even potential reasons that this thing short-circuited so completely this year? I'll give you one. The first one, and roster construction, obviously. And I talked to AJ Preller about this when he had the trade deadline press conference. And I said, how much did you make these moves for guys like Rich Hill and Garrett Cooper and G-Man Choi? How much of this was about chemistry? Because obviously that's a problem on this team. And he said, well, I mean, it's a factor, but it's not a major factor. So that was, at least in some point, somewhere in there, trying to fix what might be wrong with the chemistry on this team. So roster construction. But the other one is, has Bob Melvin, and I swear to you, Darnay, I never thought in a trillion lifetimes I would say this, has Bob Melvin lost the ear of this clubhouse? Because his teams in Oakland always played hard. They always played well beyond what their collective talent level should have been. They played well beyond what their payroll told you they should have been. So now that he's got this collection here and it's gone the exact opposite, has Bo Mel simply lost the ear of this clubhouse? And I'm not necessarily, is he a problem? Because I don't think he's a problem, but is he the solution? Is he able to rein it back in and get this fixed again? I don't know. And is he, how much of this does he have to blame? Go back to what we were talking about with the Cespedes guys. On the blame pie, how much does Bob Melvin now get for not being able to not cause it, but not prevent it and fix it?
Yes. You make a lot of good points. I struggle to
first time for everything, I guess.
I struggle to put the blame on Juan Soto, and I understand. I think he is wired a little bit differently, and I think going back to when they were really struggling early in the season, he had the quote where he's like, don't ask me. There's things like that kind of make you wonder a little bit, but I think he seems to be a guy that shows up, do my business, do my part, and kind of, go on with my day.
We also have what Joe Musgrove saying, hey, some of these guys need to come in here and forget about who they are and start doing more around the clubhouse and being more part of the team. And Joe was one of the very few guys in that clubhouse who I will say, I will listen to anything that dude has to say and take it absolutely at face value.
Yeah. And, but I just Juan has at least performed. And I was just looking at his leverage numbers, just out of curiosity, and they're not mind blowing, but they're certainly better than what we've seen from a lot of the guys. Right. And so I just, even if you disagree with maybe his approach and how he carries himself, I have a tough time pinpointing on a guy that since the first month of the season has been, consistently really, really good. Now, obviously there are lapses in the outfield and that's cost them at points. But I have a tough time putting it on him when so many guys around him have struggled. It's just weird seeing, how lifeless this team is and just the complete lack of energy and like juice of any sort. And I remember going back to 2020, and I remember commenting on the pod about this, how when they had that wild card series at Petco against the Cardinals, how much life there was in the St. Louis dugout. And those guys were loud, and it almost had the high school softball vibe where they're on the cage,
right?
College baseball game.
A college game. It was like watching a Big West game.
And they were engaged. They were into it. They were loud. There was lots of chatter, and it's hard to say. I'm not at every single game at Petco Park, but how that's not something I notice when I'm at Padres games and when I'm watching the Padres. That type of engagement and guys really cheering each other on and being vocal and slapping the wall, the dugout and all that stuff. It's just they just lack a pulse. And then when they get into these late game situations like they had against the Mariners, both games, whether they're down or whether it's a tie game, it's like the writing's on the wall the entire time. Somebody in the bullpen's going to give up a big knock, a homer or something. They're going to have one big at bat after another, and they're not going to come through. Now, credit to Garrett Cooper, hit a hard hit ball, had a chance to do some damage and put them up, I want to say, in the 6th inning. And so there's a luck element to this as well. But then did you see that swing? Fernando Tatis Jr., he had a strikeout in the 6th or the 7th. Maybe it was the 7th, I think, before the Mariners hit a homer. I think it was the top of the 8th. Where now he doesn't necessarily know where the catcher's lined up, but the spot was 9 inches, 6 inches at least out of the strike zone, and the pitcher missed low and away. So it was even further away from where the catcher was set up, where Kyle Raleigh, I believe, was behind the plate, was set up, and Fernando swings at it for strike 3. And he's had a tough stretch where he's got a lot of hard hit balls, not a whole lot of luck, but you can tell he's reaching a little bit and it's got to him. All that
his chase rate is way up in the second half. Yeah. His expected batting average is 270. His actual batting average is 170. So he's frustrated. So his chase rate has gone up like 8-9% because he's not getting results when he hits the ball hard. It's like when you're golfing and you hit a good shot and you're not rewarded for it because the step meter is running 18 and you're at the U.S. Open and you just get pissed off about it. You're not rewarded for hitting the ball well, or he's hitting the ball hard and he's not getting rewarded for it. So now he's getting ticked off and he's expanding the strike zone and his chase rate's gone way up, which they go hand in hand. He's got to be able to rein it back in.
Yeah.
Because, I know what you're talking about. And that thing was like, that thing darn near landed at the backstop and he's still swinging at it.
Yeah. Michael
Lee.
Hey,
look at that. Michael Lee, by the way. Thanks, Michael Lee, for giving us a bunch of comments here. I hit that accidentally, so we'll go ahead and go with it. Padres are done. 76 and 86 embarrassment tour 2023. Front office delusion. Why? Not mixing small ball, contact hitters. Trade Soto for Luis Ariz. I don't think the Marlins have any interest in that, and they play different positions. But I like where you're going with that.
Yeah, Michael's got a bunch of comments, from disappointment with some of the stars and the lack of enthusiasm and hungry players and all that. And if you are watching on YouTube, chime in. We'll get to your comments. Appreciate Michael. And if you're watching on the NBC San Diego streaming channel, listening on your podcast app, we certainly appreciate you including us in your routine. As frustrating as this season has been, we're glad that we're a part of it with you. It's mind-boggling to this point, and I would love for somebody to just try and stir things up a little bit, like Jake Cronenworth, or I don't know who would have the personality. It should be Manny Machado. It should be Fernando Tatis Jr. It should be Xander Bogaerts. It should be Juan Soto. Somebody that's
Carlos Perez on a Gatorade bucket. Somebody go nuts in the dugout and throw a bunch of crap on the field.
Yeah, that, or just be loud and clap and chirp and all that stuff. And a lot of people are talking about and you've talked about your frustration not having an enforcer type on this team and somebody that's willing to go at guys when Joe Kelly does what he does and that sort of thing. And people pointed out Steven Wilson clearly obviously didn't intend to hit was it
Garnett?
You're
right. Not hitting anybody with an 0-2 pitch. You're putting him away.
Clearly not intentional. But the Mariners got up and they announced their presence. We are here if things escalate. And I am, I'm not one to get into, hitting guys and fights are stupid and whatever, but just that presence and that you know what I mean? That means something. Okay, we're not necessarily going to start this thing, but we're ready to back our guys up if need be. And we just haven't seen that sort of energy and that readiness to scrap. And so I think that's been frustrating, in the midst of a season like this to not have we seen any heart? They don't seem to have that dog in them, you know?
And what did we say a couple of weeks ago here, Darnay? This team has no edge. And you need to, and when Mike Petriello was on, he kind of dismissed it. But where's the edge on this team?
Yeah.
It's not here. And that example you just brought is perfect because the Mariners were if you even think about hitting one of our guys, if there's even a hint that even if it was unintentional, which it was, again, you're not hitting anybody with an 0-2 pitch. You're just not. If it was intentional, even if it's not, we're telling you we're not okay with that. And if anything happens again, if we get any sniff of any improprieties, you're going to have a problem on your hands.
Yeah.
And the Padres either don't do that, won't do that, or can't do that. Right? Yeah. It's like Captain Jack Sparrow. This is what a man can do and what a man can do, what a man will do. Right? What will you do? They can do any of this, but will they?
Yeah.
And that's a character and an edge and a chemistry problem.
And we kind of veered away from your Bob Melvin thoughts, and I do want to get back to that because with every passing day, the likelihood seems to increase that they would maybe do something along those lines and say hey, we have to make a change of some sort. Is Peter Seidler going to fire AJ Preller? doesn't appear that way. I didn't know his contractual situation. Dennis Lin in his mailbag today said that he's with the franchise through 2026, and so there's that to consider
He
as
got a nice
well.
big extension, yeah.
But yeah, that's right. So what's the most likely outcome? That they pick a scapegoat, and who is often the scapegoat in these situations? Managers and head coaches. And I think you and I have said time and time again, we don't believe that Bob Melvin is the problem. But at a certain point, like if you're not able to kind of steer this team in the right direction, like that might be the only outcome. Does that fix the ills of this club? I don't think so. I would guess you don't think so. But you would probably have to make a change at some point. And if the change isn't Preller, the change is probably going to be the guy that Preller hired. You just run into a few issues when you do that. Like, who's AJ going to hire next? We felt like Bob Melvin was probably a home run. And
he should have been.
And
he's won everywhere he's gone.
Yeah, and it's strange, and again, factors outside of his control, certainly. But what's the profile of the next manager? Is it like, if I had to guess, like, is it going to be an Andy Green, Jace Tingler type again? Like another new guy that nobody knows. Now it's like that's a really hard sell when in 2020 when you brung in, or end of 2019 when you brought in Jace, you didn't have a roster that was like World Series capable like you should now. And so to sell some guy that from back in the day that you feel like you can kind of, dictate things to, that's a tough sell, I think, to the clubhouse and to the fan base. But if you want to get an experienced guy, like, how is the dismissal of somebody as respected as Bob Melvin perceived around the league, and certainly amongst other guys that would be, as Dennis, this is one of the things that Dennis Lin mentioned in his mailbag as well. And I think I mentioned to Todd as well. Like, how is that perceived amongst, like, whatever, like, we've talked about Ron Washington in the past, Buck Showalter, like whoever would be the name out there. And you've mentioned Mike Schilt, and maybe he's in-house and you're able to pivot there. But I would think these guys would be like, well, I don't know. I mean, Bob had issues, and he's Bob Melvin. You know what I mean? Like, why should I feel like I'm comfortable or safe going to this? And not to mention the fact, like, these guys are probably talking. And so the things that, like, I don't think we would ever, and this is the shame of it, I don't know how much we would ever hear from Bob Melvin. I would think very, very little, because he doesn't seem like the type of guy that would air out a former employer. He'd probably be a professional, good dude, keep it close to the vest. But in private conversations with, his peers, he'd probably be willing to say, I didn't have this to my disposal. I wasn't able to do this. I was forced to do that. Which might influence others and their thinking on whether or not they want to kind of pursue a job with this organization.
Well, the bottom line is, though, there are 30 Major League Baseball manager jobs, and that's it.
There's not a lot of them.
You have a chance to get one, you have a chance to have Manny Machado for a decade, and you, Darvish, and Joe Musgrove, and
or at least
Fernando,
for 2 years.
And, you have a chance to get a roster like this that I can go a lot of places, because typically talented teams don't have managerial openings, which is why, Bob coming down, and we knew the talent level was really good on this club.
Yeah.
Right. We just had to see it, carried on through the entire year and change the mentality, which Bob did for a season. And then it all fell off, came completely apart again. They got Xander Bogaerts for a decade. A lot of skippers are going to look at this and go, you know what? I'll take the Pepsi challenge with that, and I'll roll the dice, see if I can turn that around somehow. How much meddling you're getting from the front office, whatever, that's up for everybody. But again, if you can have one of 30 jobs that exist on planet Earth, it's really hard to turn one of those down. Now, if you're looking for a guy who, like, what type of manager, because, and then again, we're not saying that Bob Melvin is going to be gone or that he should be gone, but it's certainly, as you said, trending that direction. Skip Schumacher is a manager of the Marlins right now. The Marlins have nowhere near the payroll or talent level that the Padres have. They right now hold by a half game the final National League wildcard spot with, by the way, a -38 run differential. the Padres are plus 56. Skip Schumacher was on this coaching staff a couple of years ago with Jace Tingler. Skip Schumacher, we all knew was going to be a manager at some point. We saw the way he played. I love talking to the guy when he was here. Like he's wired with this mentality that's, I don't care what it takes. I'm going to beat you. And I think he's instilling that into his players. So if you're talking about a guy who might be able to, some type of mold to bring in for something like that, I think that's probably the type of guy that you're looking at. A guy who was fairly recently a player, who kind of understands how modern day baseball is played on the field because he was there very recently, who's got that edge, but is able to control that. Like that's the problem, I think, with Phil Nevin, is he's got that edge. He didn't know how to corral it all the time, or even most of the time, to keep it. And you see what's happening with the Angels as well right now after they went all in. Somebody who like Schumacher, who occasionally can get thrown out and can show fire. Remember, he got tossed in 2021. Was the first time ever he'd been thrown out of a game, as he just finally had enough. But he was always kind of walking that line and that edge of, there's something here. If you want to mess with it, don't mess with it. Nobody messed with it. That's a kind of mentality I think you're looking for a team like this. Now, who has that? I haven't looked into it yet. I'd have to take a week to figure out for next podcast. But if Bomel is the guy who's going to be the fall guy for this,
I hope it's not for next podcast.
You're looking at a Schumacher kind of guy, right?
Yeah.
It is a Mike Schilt who's already in the pipeline.
Schumacher did have some interesting comments on Levitard's show earlier this season saying, I've been on staffs before where it was a little bit toxic and guys were going after each other's jobs. How many staffs has Skip Schumacher been on before?
Well, he was on the Padres staff with Jace Tingler, and I think that's it.
He was with Andy Green, wasn't he too?
Was he with Andy? He might have been a holdover from Andy Green.
I believe he was a holdover from Andy Green. But all that to say, like, when you have a limited track record coaching experience, it's not hard to figure out like what you're referencing. And so
you're not exactly well. Yeah, he was. Well, shoot, he was with the Padres from 18 to 21. So yeah, he bridged Andy Green and Jace Tingler, and then last year he was with the Cardinals with Carlos Marmol. And that could have been the one you're talking about too, because he's had a fairly, rough go of it, at least this year.
Yeah. I don't know. It's discouraging. I'm hearing myself on your end. Do you have your speakers up? Are you able to dip those down a little bit? It just started a minute ago. Yeah. That helps. Nicely done. So yeah, I think we're
technology, man. We got this.
we're working it out. With Bob Melvin, I think we agree, like probably not the guy, but maybe that ends up being the move. I do wonder, and there is part of me that is concerned of like, does he have this club's ear? And then I think that was brought up, especially when he did kind of have his like fire and brimstone moment early this season and didn't amount to anything the way it did last September. So we'll see where that goes, but it's like, the longer it goes, we don't have answers. Again, the manager, the head coach tends to kind of end up in focus. I'm just looking over my notes. Other things I wanted to get to. Trade deadline deals haven't really worked out.
Not yet. No. Garrett Cooper's got a couple of hard hit balls. Rich Hill did not throw the ball well against his former team. G-Man Choi really hasn't popped.
It's looking 2021-ish. Is discouraging. We
yeah, but in 2021, like you knew what they needed, right? They needed pitching, and they got none of it. This year, what do they need? They need length in the rotation. Okay, they got it with Rich Hill. They need a left-handed bat off the bench. They got that with G-Man Choi, and they added another bench depth with Garrett Cooper, veteran guys. Like they pretty much did, and then Scott Barlow needed help in the bullpen. Barlow had one really good outing in Colorado and has looked absolutely like he doesn't know which end to put the glove on since. Nobody saw that coming. So they addressed what they needed this year. 2021, they didn't do that. 2022, they went above and beyond in doing that. And this year, I think they're going to hit that sweet spot right in the middle, and it's still not working out.
Yeah. Yeah, Barlow sporting a 13.5 ERA so far in 4 2/3 innings. Rich Hill, obviously, we saw him blow up on Sunday. And G-Man Choi. What's G-Man doing so far? Let's see.
Well,
No
let's not worry
hits.
about that.
No hits. Hey, a 357 OBP. Yeah, it's been discouraging. And again, it's like when you look at the blame pie, and we did this a couple weeks ago, like how much of it is AJ? It's like maybe the Melvin piece has gotten a little bit bigger. I think the player piece is still pretty considerable, but if you go through another trade deadline, it's hard because like we do kind of praise some of these moves in the moment, but then when they don't work out, it's like
Yeah, as especially when you see Lance Lynn starting on Sunday night, who has been truly just awful against left-handed hitters this year. And then he shuts down this lineup that has some pretty darn good left-handed hitters in it. It's
which leads
happening?
Which leads you to think it's an ecosystem thing.
Right, exactly. Everybody goes to LA, somehow gets better. Everybody who comes here suddenly is just like, oh, well, I guess this is fine.
At least at the deadline. It's like, they've made some off-season acquisitions that have certainly worked out. And obviously when you look at the rotation, there are examples of that. But it's like mid-season, getting guys to come here and perform, it is just a struggle. And
even like Xander Bogaerts, like his OPS right now is 80 points below his career average. It's more than 100 points below it's been the last couple of years. He didn't forget how to hit. He didn't suddenly age 40 years. What is happening?
Well, and going back to Dennis Lynn again, made an interesting point. If you look at the top performers on this team and guys that we've talked a lot about who have struggled, those being Machado, Bogaerts, Cronenworth, Tatis to some degree. I think more so lately. I think we've all been kind of fine with his performance, but now he's in a rough stretch. What do Machado, Bogaerts, and Cronenworth, what do they do this past off season that Soto didn't do, that Hader didn't do, that Snell didn't do, that Ha-Seong Kim didn't do?
They got their money.
Is that a thing?
It could be. It could very well be. Especially, and you see, what is Blake Snell doing right now? Playing for a contract. And he's having one of his better years, even though his walks are maddeningly infuriating.
Yeah.
Josh Hader having arguably the best year of his career. He's in a contract year. Juan Soto has one more year of arbitration, but he's still, as far as he's concerned, he is in a contract year. So you're getting really good performances from all of these guys. But then you look at Joe Musgrove. Once he got right physically, he was having arguably his best season.
Yeah.
Darvish has been dealing with little things here and there, the World Baseball Classic, little, tweaks here and there. When he's been on, he's been every bit as good as ever. He has not had that problem. So if it's a money thing, then it's a money thing because of different personalities of players. And if it's the different personalities of players, then what the hell are the Padres doing when they're evaluating these guys? Is there a quote unquote makeup aspect to what they're looking at, which they tell us every year they have? They look at draftees, makeup, free agent signings, makeup, potential trade acquisitions, makeup. They tell us that they are focusing a lot on who these guys are and what they're all about, and not just the production. And if they're doing that and these guys are getting paid and then shutting it down, then they are missing remarkably on the makeup of these players. And that's a problem with their analysis and evaluation process. Now, I honestly, I was here for Jared Gaither with the Chargers, okay? He basically ran himself out of Kansas City because he didn't want to play after he got paid. He came to the Chargers and was completely the best left tackle in football for half a year because he was trying to get paid. He got a big contract and then all of a sudden was hurt and played like 7 more games with the Chargers and took home a nice fat paycheck. In fact, Takeo Spikes don't even call him by his name. He'd say that guy or he who shall not be named. Like he wouldn't even mention Jared Gaither's name. He was so mad at him. I don't think that's a problem with Manny Machado, because after his first contract, obviously that didn't happen. Xander Bogaerts has come with nothing but the highest of bona fides from guys who have played with him. I don't think that's a problem for him. Jake Cronenworth has been a grinder his entire life. Anybody who's a hockey goalie is going to have some kind of fight in them. I don't think that's a problem with Jake. I think, if anything, if it's money related, it's because they're trying too hard. They're pressing. Like we talked, Jake Cronenworth needs to just be Jake Cronenworth. 15 home runs and a 270 average is awesome, and it's all-star caliber as a second baseman. But he's trying to be Freddie Freeman as a first baseman. He's not Freddie Freeman. His swing looks longer to me this year. He's trying to generate more power, more launch angle, whatever it is. He's not the same player right now, probably because he's trying to do what he thinks his team needs him to do and be a power threat at a corner power spot. This traditionally first base is where you get a lot of your home runs, instead of just being the guy that earned the contract. So if anything, I think they're trying to do too much rather than shutting down from doing too little. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, I think so. I just saw something. Xander Bogaerts hasn't drawn a walk the last 12 games. That seems like a long stretch. I was just looking at his numbers. Last 12 games, 50 plate appearances, 49 at-bats. So there's, like a fielder's choice type situation somewhere in there. No homers, 1 double, 13 hits. He's only struck out 4 times, but his on base is 260, his slug is 286, OPS 546. So no power, and basically if you're not hitting the ball, you're not getting on base, which I guess is a oversimplification. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. I hadn't realized that Xander Bogaerts literally never draws walks, which isn't helpful. And maybe that goes to your point where you're like trying too hard to kind of desperately make something happen. Although if that were the case, I would think he would have more strikeouts. I'm guessing his contact rate is pretty high, but he's not doing a whole lot with it.
Well, last year in 150 games, he only had 57 walks. This year in 109 games, he's got 44. So actually, it looks like he's walking more, somehow walking more this year.
That's really interesting. Well, not in the last dozen games.
Which is weird. If that's a part of his game, where'd it go?
Yeah. Keith DeMolder on Twitter, a guy I've kind of gone back and forth with a little bit through the years. He posed a lineup change. And, I think he dropped Tatis, dropped Bogaerts, but without going into the specifics of like what he posed, just kind of the idea of like, again, when we're grasping for straws and just trying to do anything, do you drop Tatis down in the bottom of the order? Do you drop, do you move up Luis Campusano, who's been a revelation? I was just
Campy's been really, really good.
I was just looking at Jake's numbers. The last 12 games, he's got a 383 average with an OPS over 1,000. Do you shuffle things around a little bit? Obviously, I think you keep Ha-Seong Kim where he is. I think Keith had Soto batting second. Campusano, Machado, Sanchez in some order, Cronenworth. Do you move Tatis and Bogaerts down? Like, do you just shuffle a bunch of stuff and say, hey guys, I don't want you to get your feelings hurt here, but like, we're just going to try some things. We've got some guys that are delivering, some in a fixed position, others, maybe we should move up. Like, we're in desperation mode. We're going to try it. At this point, again, I would go out in the town and have a weird night together, and I would pick someone in the dugout that just is loud and boisterous and tries to like get under people's skin and fire people up, and I would probably shuffle the lineup. And if that doesn't work, I'm Bob Melvin. I'm just like, all right, guys, it's been real.
Yeah, to hell with feelings.
To hell with feelings is right.
Feeling at this point, no, this is a results-based business, right? If you're not performing, you get moved down in the lineup, if not out of it. It makes perfect sense to me. You got somebody who's shown the 2, 3, 4 games that they're swinging a hot bat, get them more at bats, because the higher up in the order you are, the more plate appearances you're going to get. That's how math works. That's how Major League Baseball math works. Get the guys in there that are performing the best. Ha-Sung Kim has absolutely earned, without question, the ability to be in the leadoff spots for the next 20 games.
Yeah.
And then reevaluate after that. Jake Cronenworth right now has earned the right to be, hitting 2 or 3 for the next 20 games. Because just look, going back to July 28th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 multi-hit games. Right, he had a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So he had an 11-game hit streak snapped on Wednesday. And only 4 of those games, he only had 1 hit. But also in that time, he's only got 1 home run because he's just putting the damn ball in play. That's what Jake Cronenworth needs to do. Put the ball in play and be that table setter. So you move him up in the order. If he's putting the ball in play and there are guys on base, they're turning into runs batted in. If there's nobody on base, he's on base for the big run producers to drive in. Do that. Go with the guy who is swinging the bat well right now and screw everybody else's feelings because they think, oh, I'm a number 2 hitter. No, you're not. You're not hitting like a number 2 hitter. You're hitting like a number 8 hitter. You're hitting 8th.
I was just looking at when and where Fernando Tatis Jr. is hitting the order. It's been a while since I guess in 2021, he hit 9th in 2021 for some reason. At some point.
He came in to pinch hit in the game and then stayed in there.
Oh, yeah. You're right.
That was the days of the double switch, by the way.
True. That's a very good point. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I think that's another one of the things I would give it a whirl. At this point, you gotta, push whatever buttons you can, whatever's available to you, and hope that you can ignite some sort of spark. And now's the time that you absolutely have to do it because of the teams ahead of you. And as bad as it is to lose 4 straight, they're still sitting here, 5 out, 4.5 out, all is not lost from that standpoint. I want to say the Cubs have maybe cooled off a little bit. Do I have that right?
Yeah, 6-4 in their last 10 after they won 8 straight.
Yeah. And they were threatening to be that team that does what the Padres need to do and just somebody's got to do it, take a stranglehold of this thing. And so, you still feel like, all right, it's there for the taking. And so all is not lost despite the 4-game skid, but now coming back to the original point that we made, this might be the time where they plant their flag as either contenders or frauds and the season's over. And it can't come soon enough because they're just dragging us through the mud for weeks and months on end without are you real or not? And maybe we'll go back and be the old line, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. Maybe they showed us who they were the first couple months of the season. We just refused to believe them. That could also end up being the case. It's just hard when it is that kind of seesaw mediocrity type situation, where maybe that's what it is. It's just an 80-win ball club, and we just failed to make peace with that.
Because it shouldn't be that way. Nothing about their metrics, go back to the preseason win totals and WAR estimates based on guys with real track records. This is a 90-plus win team. Literally no one on the planet saw this coming. And if anybody tries to tell you that, they're a freaking liar.
No, you're right. And, as we wind down, I think that's what's difficult is, the ESPNs and Fangraphs and others were projecting them to be
Pacoda, Steamer, you name it. Everybody had this team win, most of them winning a division, if not being in lockstep with the Dodgers to try and win it.
And praising deals like Bogarts and even as recently as the trade deadline, and those obviously have time to turn around. But it has been we've all been blindsided, Derek, and we'll see. We'll see what happens in the next week. We'll see what happens over the weekend in Arizona. There's been a couple days where I'm like, oh, if there was Bob Melvin news, would I necessarily be surprised today? Probably not. But I'm glad that's not the case. I hope for Bob's sake that isn't the case. I think we enjoy him. We enjoy covering him. We respect him. But something's not working right now. And but you know what, Derek? There's still time. There's still time. And so
that's what's so messed up.
We'll be holding on to it just like you, and appreciate you hanging on with us and enjoying it with us and going through it with us. Thanks for listening to your podcast app. Thanks for watching on YouTube, NBC San Diego streaming. We will catch up with you next week. Heads up, chin up, Derek. It'll be all right.